Welcome to this episode of Hardman Talks. I'm Larissa Adams from Hardman & Co, and I'm excited to be joined here by David Stredder, founder of Mello Events. Hi there, David.
Hi, Larissa.
Hi, thank you for joining us. Mello is an open community of high net worth retail investors, and you run events which bring together investors and listed companies. But I think before we start talking about Mello itself, perhaps you could just tell us a bit about your background and how you became involved in investing in companies, and what would you say your investment style is?
I mean, I started investing really when I was in my teens. I was very fortunate that the school that I was at, the economics teacher was very, very keen on investing and entered a group of us into a Daily Telegraph investment competition for effectively under 18s. And I seem to remember that we finished, if it wasn't second, it was third, but really high up. It was a national competition. And I think from that moment, having been sifting through lots of companies for the competition, I think I got hooked on the idea of how well shares performed, and maybe it was a good place to put some money. And to be honest, even by the time I was 18, because I was very fortunate in having a bit of a sporting career. I was a spin bowler. I'd managed to win quite a lot of money in a tournament that involved spinning a ball, basically. Sounds ridiculous, but it's true. And, I'd earned quite a bit of money by then. So I wanted to utilize it rather than just leave it in the bank, I think. What was the second half of the question, Larissa?
So we've jam-packed the questions here. So I just said, how would you describe your investment style?
I think from my origins in property, I started off looking at special situations where, companies held property on their balance sheet, but nowhere near at the value that it had inherently. And there was one that I remember as an example was James Latham, which is still a listed timber merchant. They had a huge development in East London where they held a lot of their timber in store. It was right by the Olympic Park in the end, although the Olympics was not even in their thoughts at the time. But that held a lot of value as a site to build houses on. And when they finally let it go, I think it was worth something like 17 times the amount that it was in the books at. So that was a really big gain, and gave me an initial sort of view on looking for hidden assets, as it were. But I've always been pretty much a value player, looking at companies that are undervalued, and generally maybe picking off companies that have something that the rest of the market hasn't seemed to appreciate.
Looking for that golden goose.
You never know. Yeah, you never know.
Okay, excellent. So I guess the phrase or slogan that keeps coming up when I look at Mello is that it's run by investors for investors. So let's move on to talk about why you started Mello a few years ago, and how has it developed from the original monthly dinner club in Beckenham into the significant role that it plays for the retail investor today.
Yeah, I mean, it did have its origins in Beckenham. You're quite right. We were really just a group of investors wanting to meet companies. AGMs were often the only time you'd really get to see the directors in those days. So I wanted something that would give us a platform to get to meet the companies. And, my original view, looking at companies, it's quite an isolated sort of existence. As an investor, you're acting on your own in the main. So it's not like you've got a huge team around you. And you wanted to share some of your views. So, the websites that were available in those days, mainly the Motley Fool, were quite good for connecting with people, but we didn't have any means to meet up. And the Motley Fool set up one or two social evenings, but they were really more for just general, not just investors, but even people who were just interested in writing about their favorite topic. And I thought maybe we need a really dedicated investor evening. So that's why I started Mello, and it just grew and grew. You know, we had maybe 15 or 20 people at the first one. And then before I knew it, after, you know, probably about 3 or 4 months of having these, we were at 50 or 60. And then after a year and a half, we actually outgrew having those in the main. So we went into the city, we were invited in by FinCap, one of the brokers. And they said, why don't your group hold your meetings with us, and we'll have a couple of companies from FinCap, and you can have a couple of companies that you want to see, and we'll make an afternoon stroke evening of it. And they set up a lovely buffet for us at the end of it. I mean, everybody really enjoyed it. So before you know it, you've got 200 or 300 people that have been to those. And it just, you know, everything keeps growing. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if we could have a really big conference where we all got together and met up and got all the companies to come into one place, not just 4 of them. Maybe we'll go for a really big number, like 20. So I'm really lucky in that I kept playing sport, and my mixed doubles player at the time, who everyone will know as Georgina, she said, we could probably do it. Let's give it a go. You know, let's see if we can arrange for all these companies to, you know, attend a conference. We aimed at having a really low cost venue. So we went to Derby in the middle of the country, lots of hotels there because there's quite a few big businesses there. So it was great. We picked the right location. It was an Art Deco building, and it was quite quirky, but the investors loved it. And not only did we get, well, actually more than 20, I think we got 45 companies to come to the first one. And it was over 2 days, or was it 3 days? Even my memory is going now. I think it might have been 3 days. And everybody really enjoyed it. We got great reviews. We were in the Financial Times. There was all sorts going on. And it then became a regular every 6 months event. We moved around the country. We've held events in Peterborough, in Hever, in Kent. We regularly now are in Chiswick at the conference centre, but of course the pandemic got in the way of that. So normally we would be a live events company and running things for the investors, and we're investors, so we like to feel generally we know exactly what the investors enjoy. It's not just meeting companies, it's really networking together, the brokers, the PR people, the advisors, lots of fund managers, everybody groups together, and it's a bit like, well, it has been described as the sort of Woodstock for investors, and it seems to be the sort of thing that everyone looks forward to. So, and the key difference for us, and I know, you know, there are lots of events around, the key difference for us is that people are willing to pay to actually come and attend the events. So we know they're engaged, we know that they're going to be there. If it's snow on the ground, or there's a, you know, something awful happens and people think, I don't fancy going out today, they still come to Mello. So we can always guarantee sort of 700 at a live event. It's great.
Yeah, I think it's one of the first things that I did when I moved to London from South Africa was actually go to Mello events when I first started working for Hardman. So,
Good.
And it's definitely, there was a buzz about it. And I think it goes beyond just interesting companies, and that's obviously the first thing that people are there for, but it's also the networking, it's the mingling and getting to hear what other people are thinking around, because retail investors don't get that opportunity very often. So I thought that was something unique about Mello, definitely.
Yeah.
So, okay, next question. So the pandemic has brought many new market dynamics, but it seems for retail investors, the global lockdown has provided both time and opportunity for younger people to start investing. So there's been a vast amount of data out there showing the growth in the number of investors now in the market coming from Gen Z and millennials. So are you seeing those changes in the Mello network and the audience demographic? And if so, how is Mello adapting to an increasingly younger audience?
Do you want the long answer or the short answer?
Somewhere in the middle.
Okay. Well, we did. I mean, we've now gone to a virtual event, as you know, but the audience might not know about it. But we can't run our physical event because of the pandemic, so we quickly moved online. We have a regular Mello Monday, which is every 2 weeks. So we know our audience attending those, and we still have 500 or 600 attending those every fortnight. But they're not getting younger, unfortunately. I'd love to say we've got a vast young audience out there, but I'm not sure where we're going to find them. I mean, even my own kids who do, you know, they attend as well, but only on an occasional basis if it's something that really attracts them. In the main, I think the younger audience, as it were, they've downloaded an app, they're trading online, they see it more as trading, not investing. You know, there's so many differences when you're below 30. There's not many serious investors out there. They're wanting to get to the quicker money. You know, I can give my own children little nudges on things that I think are worth looking at. Occasionally they'll invest, but when it goes up 20%, sometimes they've disappeared, you know, and I'll say to them when I next see them, and I'll say, how do you get on with that one I mentioned the other week? You know, and they'll say, oh, I sold that. We got quick 15%. We've moved on. And, you know, and occasionally they'll be dabbling in Bitcoin and all sorts of stuff. It's just not, you know, we're not on the same wavelength with that. That's for sure. Now, I think, you know, eventually they will, you know, if hopefully when they've made plenty of money, they'll want to keep it and not risk it all the time. But I think when you're younger and you've only got a certain amount to play with, you tend to go for the more exciting, sexier stocks, shall we say. And it's not what Mello is about. You know, I mean, Mello is very much more for the longer term investors who want to meet management, get to know everything about a company and hopefully stick with it until it changes. Yeah, so, you know, the Mello Mondays are probably not quite as much for the younger crowd, but we do feel we offer things that but they will learn, you know, and sometimes you have to, you know, just walk a little bit more before you run. And at Mello we have lots of educational sessions, and I think there is a lot to benefit the younger ones. Maybe we should have a special low-cost younger youth ticket, but I don't know. Difficult one. You'll have to let me know whether you think there's something we'd need to do to attract the younger ones.
Yeah, I suppose they're looking for, well, not looking for, but I think they've got a higher appetite for riskier investments, and it's just the way things are right now. And I think there's been a wave of younger people just trading on new platforms. It's much easier for them to get involved, and information is readily available out there. So it's but yeah, I think it's just a demographic shifts that will probably happen naturally over time with Mello, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the thing is, Larissa, our average investor that attends Mello, whether it's physical or even virtual, is probably around, you know, 55 years old. They've grown up with a broker almost. The most that they are doing that's had any sort of speedier access to it is probably by having online access to a platform now. But, you know, the younger ones, they started off never having a broker. They wouldn't know what a broker is. You know, they've gone straight to having an app where they tap a button and, you know, they bought it and sold it within 4.7 seconds. So, you know, what's a broker?
Not much analysis there.
No, and you know, it's going to be difficult for me to change that, but you know, eventually, you know, they do find Mello, hopefully. And one thing I will say is that the pandemic has not affected us. We gained, you know, a huge mass of new investors. They were probably already investing, but couldn't actually attend our physical events. But because we're now virtual and we're giving them 4-hour shows every Monday, you know, they're really happy to sort of tune in and see what's happening and which companies are presenting. So 60% currently of those who come to our Monday have not actually walked into one of our events. So I don't know what we will do when we go back physical in November, and I don't want to ruin anything that you might be asking me next, but you know, we will get back to physical. We want to get back to physical, but I don't think we'll be able to exclude all those new investors that we've acquired.
We'll hold that thought. I just wanted to discuss the companies for a little bit that have presented on Mello. So there's been a range of different companies that come onto Mello, a range of sectors, they're at varied stages of their business growth as well. So you must be seeing some key themes and similar narratives that are coming through all the time. So what would you say has really stood out to you over the last, say, 2 to 3 months from the company presentations?
I mean, the companies that have been to us probably are, in a sense, pre-selecting themselves. You're not going to want to come and talk to a really serious, engaged audience if you've got anything to fear. You know, if you're not doing very well, or you've made some mistakes and you've not recovered, or the pandemic's hurt you, and you're obviously blatantly going to be raising money, it's not really the place to be at Mello. There will be other events where you can probably promote yourself, but at Mello the questions are quite serious and engaging, so you'll be found out if you see what I mean. So I see all the questions. The audience obviously send them to me, and I ask the presenters. I don't really shirk from asking a question. I want audiences to appreciate that we're not there to sort of candy floss something. We're there to really make it a serious, useful session. So companies are told that as well. So I always say, if you pass through Mello with an improved outlook and everybody likes you, then you're in a good place, because they won't be there just for the next day. They'll be there for quite a long time.
But if you had to pick a specific sector or something that's really stood out to you, especially with the pandemic, things that companies are now watching out for, or a sort of similar narrative, I think a lot of people are pricing in quite a strong recovery in the UK. So how has the narrative been from, and has there been a sort of key theme that's been a running?
I get a bit wary of some companies that are clearly doing well compared to last year, because last year was a really one-off, unusual, weak year, and I'd like comparatives to be more with 2019, so that we know exactly how they're coming out of it. We probably need a good few more months before we know truly what their costs and how they're faring in this current year. I've seen a lot of companies that say, oh, our costs have gone down and we're making better profits, but are their costs just temporarily down while they're not doing overseas travel, or they're not obviously doing too much even within this country, where they're having to have high expenses or costs of sales? So, once we've had products and things that are, currently being seen as more scarce, so the prices are going to go up and they will have higher costs. So it could be a temporary thing that the companies currently reporting are seeing good increased profits. But the sectors that are doing really well, it seems, are things like healthcare and technology, and those really are the theme from the pandemic. I mean, we do on Mello have specialist shows, so it's not just on a Monday. We have Tuesdays where we cover sectors, and we had a healthcare sector show literally only 10 days ago, I think, maybe a bit longer. And we had 6 companies on that, and 2 or 3 of them have done really well even since that show, when they've announced new things within healthcare. And it's amazing how that sector is still really hot. So, it's nice to do those shows, because we can introduce new companies that wouldn't otherwise come to Mello. But I once again, how long will that sector be hot? There'll be maybe another sector that will come along from nowhere. I do wonder about the financial sector, because that'll have been pushed down, but maybe that's artificially low and we'll have to bounce back. Recruitment and all sorts of sectors are probably, going to come bouncing back. But technology, we've advanced, just Mello with technology, we've had to advance 5 years in literally only about 6 months or a year. So I can see why technology companies are being sought after and why they're doing well.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I suppose, well, you are hosting the Mello events, so you're seeing a lot of investor questions that are coming through all the time and fielding them to the companies. So are there any key characteristics that investors, that you see time and time again, investors are asking and they're looking for from management teams, or any financial metrics that you would say retail investors are placing a lot of weight on now in 2021?
Well, the one thing I do see when I'm running the shows is management being honest and helping guide investors is so important. You know, so many companies, and you'll see it at Hardman as well, you know, they don't have proper research out there, forecasts, things that, you know, investors can actually look at and hold the directors, the management to account for, to say, why did you fail to do this? You said you were going to do that. Or, you know, and they want to know that, you know, they're being guided in the right way. And I don't know whether management try to stay clear of doing it so they have an easy ride, or whether they just genuinely don't know where the company's going. But investors are looking for management teams that are positive, or put, you know, good potential figures out there, and then obviously hit them. You know, as ever, we always like, you know, under promising and overachieving is always the best way to go. So as long as there's targets that are achievable and we can hold them to account for it, that's great.
Yeah, that's very true. Okay, so you've touched on it, physical events in the near future for Mello, but are there any other new initiatives happening at Mello, or do you want to expand on that a little bit? So just tell us, what does the rest of 2021 look like for Mello?
Yeah, well, I mean, Mello never rests on its laurels. We want to introduce new things all the time, and we pick up on any noise that's out there from investors, on gaps that, you know, are not being filled, anything that people want to see and just can't get access to. We like covering the sectors, as I mentioned, and having, even in sector events, we try and have an educational element to it. It's no use if you just hear from the companies. You want the investors in a particular sector to tell the other investors what they see and how they're expecting that sector to go. We like fund managers who are well known for any sector coverage. And of course, any of the, you know, the commentators out there. I mean, we like basically we're a show. We're not a force-fed sort of company webinar. We really want to be a show that dedicates to investors. And that's why they're all happy to pay to come and see us. So it's really nice. It's a good place to be. We're adding research, as you well know from Hardman, we're adding research elements to our website. And, you know, we will keep adding things as we go along and try and blend physical and virtual. That's our next big challenge. How we do that will be, you know, we've probably got to spend a couple of months working out exactly how we can do it. Whether we get it right first time, we don't know. We won't be, I don't think we'll be over ambitious for the first one, which we hope will be in November. Keep November the 22nd to the 24th in your diaries. But we will try and, you know, do the best we can for those who are in the main in places like the Isle of Man and Jersey and Switzerland, and bizarrely lots in Quebec in Canada. I don't know why Mello's got lots of followers in Quebec in Canada, but anyway, we will try and, you know, branch it out to everywhere we can and keep everyone happy. Keep a smile on the face like yours. Lovely smile.
Absolutely. No, sounds great, David. I think that's about wraps it up for us. Thank you for your answers. That was excellent. And it's been a pleasure chatting to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So to our viewers, please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. We appreciate your time very much, and we'll see you back here on Hardman Talks. Thank you.